Tom doesn't consent to this. What? Mick, are you kidding me? Dang it.
Anyone watching like Loki right now?
Yeah!
Pretty good, right? Any other shows that you guys like watching this summer? Oh, the Bad Batch, yeah. Bad Batch. So I'm not a big Star Wars guy, bigger Marvel guy.
I do great camera work.
But one of my favorite shows ever is called Attack on Titan. It's an anime, so that either like gets me red points or like I totally lose respect like just watching anime. So that's up to you. But I love that show so much because it's about this group of people, like all of humanity is trapped behind these walls, like these 3 massive walls. And these walls are like 50 meters high. And if you're an American like me and you don't know the metric system, that equals 164 feet. Or 24 and a half Rorys stacked on top of each other. Whatever you like better.
I like that you calculated that.
I did calculate that. I think you know, calculator out. Or half a football field if you're really, really struggling. But these giant walls are up because there's these man-eating giants outside of them. They're like 20 meter tall, 160 meters tall. You can like look over the wall and like terrorize people. And it's super scary. And there's no hope for humanity. They're all just trapped behind these walls. And it's really scary. But there's a military that fights on behalf of humanity. And one of the branches of the military are the scouts. And what the scouts do is they venture out past the walls, looking to kill the titans, the big giants, and just try to like plot little outposts. And it takes a lot of bravery to do that. Like imagine you're staring at this 20 meter tall giant and you're weak, you're helpless, there's nothing you can do. But these guys, like they're equipped to do so. And it takes a lot of bravery to do that. If one person is just selfish or fearful or anything like that and just destroys the rest of the team, people are going to get hurt. Whether that's the military or people they're fighting for. There's a time in the show where one of the main characters like literally annihilates an entire city because he was acting on his own accord. And I don't think that's cool. I don't think it's cool to like act on your own behalf, especially when you have a team. But I think there's something noble about operating with a team. Kind of like the World War II guys. Like they fought for something noble. They fought for something bigger than themselves, for freedom, for liberty, for the Jews in the Holocaust. Like they were fighting for something bigger. And I think we're fighting for something bigger too, and a lot of us don't even realize it. Like we are these Christians on this world that are trying to do our best, but in the midst of it, there's just these battles going on between us. We're fighting for eternal life when the stakes are eternal death. And we don't realize that. And I think there's 2 reasons why we don't realize that. One, fear. I think it's scary to be a Christian. I think there's a lot against you. And I think selfishness is another one. I think we have a lot of motives that are hidden and don't really serve others well. And we don't have time to talk about both of them. So I'm going to focus on one. And that one's going to be selfishness. And I think the best person to go when it comes to selfishness is Jonah, because he's a scumbag. Yeah, Jonah the dude who got eaten by a huge fish. Not a good dude. It's a huge fish. Anyways, we're going to read all of Jonah today. And so if you've never read an entire book of the Bible, tonight's the night. Like, it's only 48 verses. It's not a lot, and it's going to be super awesome. So I hope, as we read it, I hope that you understand the consequences of Jonah's selfishness. I hope you see that the Lord's mercy is so much greater than Jonah's selfishness. And ultimately, I hope you see that God's mercy is totally worth selling out for. So, if you have your Bibles, I definitely encourage you to take them out. If you have your phone, definitely take it out. And let's just read chapter 1. Throw in there. I don't have it on the big screen because I'm not tech savvy. Jonah. It's called Jonah. It's page 1165 in my Bible. I I don't know what it is in your Bible. It's in the Old Testament, near the end of it. Right after like Obadiah or something, or Amos.
No, it's what version?
I'm in NIV, the best version. All right. So Jonah chapter 1. The word of the Lord came to Jonah, son of Amittai. Go to the great city of Nineveh and preach against it, because its wickedness has come up before me. But Jonah ran away from the Lord and headed for Tarshish. He went down to Joppa, where he found a ship bound for that port. After paying the fare, he went aboard and sailed for Tarshish to flee from the Lord. Then the Lord sent a great wind on the sea, and such a violent storm arose that the ship threatened to break up. All the sailors were afraid, and each cried out to his own God. And they threw the cargo into the sea to lighten the ship. But Jonah had gone below deck, where he lay down and fell into a deep sleep. The captain went to him and said, "How can you sleep? Get up and call on your God. Maybe he will take notice on us, so that we will not perish." Then the sailors said to each other, "Come, let us cast lots to find out who is responsible for this calamity." They cast lots, and the lot fell on Jonah. So they asked him, "Tell us, who is responsible for making all this trouble for us? What kind of work do you do? Where do you come from? What is your country? From what people are you?" He answered, "I am a Hebrew, and I worship the Lord, the God of heaven, who made the sea and the dry land." This terrified them, and they asked, "What have you done?" They knew he was running away from the Lord, because he had already told them so. The sea was getting rougher and rougher, so they asked him, "What should we do to you to make the sea calm down for us?" "Pick me up and throw me into the sea," he replied, "and it will become calm. I know that it is my fault that this great storm has come upon you." Instead, the men did their best to row back to land, but they could not, for the sea grew even wilder than before. Then they cried out to the Lord, "Please, Lord, do not let us die for taking this man's life. Do not hold us accountable for killing an innocent man, for you, Lord, have done as you pleased." Then they took Jonah, threw him overboard, and the raging sea grew calm. At this, the men greatly feared the Lord, and they offered a sacrifice to the Lord and made vows to him. And so if that was like a struggle for you to read, that was the longest book or chapter in Jonah. So you did it. Good job, everyone. So verse 1 through 3, we see God gives this command to Jonah. He's like, "Jonah, go to Nineveh and preach to the Ninevites." And Jonah's like, "No," and he goes the complete opposite direction. Like if Joppa, that's where Jonah was at, is here, Nineveh's like right here, and Tarshish is way over here. That's like if I asked you to go to Colorado, and you're like, "I'm going to go to California instead," which is your loss, because California kind of sucks. Yeah, big facts right there. Sorry if I offended you, but not really. And so it takes a lot of like guts and balls to be like, "God, I'm not going to listen to you. I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to go do my own thing." And so Jonah doesn't just get off scot-free. God's going to be like, "Okay, you can run from me, but I'm going to send a storm." And so now you're putting others in danger, because Jonah's not alone on his boat. There's sailors on his boat that worship other gods, and now Jonah's actions are putting them in danger, which is totally selfish. It's like, I wouldn't want to put someone else's livelihood at risk just because I don't feel like speaking about the Lord or doing something for the Lord. And even worse, like, this whole sermon, I'm really just going to be making a case for why Jonah is like the biggest scumbag of the Bible. Despite him putting others in danger, he just sleeps through it. I'm going to go take a nap and not even worry about everyone else panicking and nearly dying up there. Like, I'm good. I'm going to go take a nap. Like, I wish my life was that easy. It'd be super awesome. And so the sailors cry out to their God, no response. And they eventually learn that Jonah's the reason that they're in this pickle. They're not going to really get away from it. And so they're like, "What do we do?" And Jonah's like, "Okay, you guys, no worries. Like, you just throw me off the boat, everything will be A-okay." And we're like, "Okay, yeah, that's a good move. Like, Jonah, that's a really stand-up thing you did. Like, I know we had like a rough patch in the beginning, but really, you're an okay guy." But really, that's like the most selfish thing you could do, right? Like, if I don't want to go preach to Nineveh, like, toss me in the sea to die. Like, super easy to get rid of it. Not even start preaching. And so Jonah's incredibly selfish at this point. And I think he's not really reflecting God well at all. Like, these sailors, they don't know God or Jesus or anybody at this point. And Jonah's the only person they know about God. And I think that's often how we are. We're often in the same boat as Jonah. I looked up the top descriptors that non-believers use to describe Christians, and here are just a few. Hypocritical, judgmental, fake, boring, unforgiving, snobbish, selfish, and untrustworthy. And if you're like me, you're like, none of those words should ever describe a Christian, right? Like, I hope I'm not hypocritical or judgmental or fake or unforgiving, really. And it's like, I think part of that is people don't understand who Christ is, but I also think the bigger part is that we haven't done a good job of displaying Christ and reflecting Christ. And so we act like Jonah. We become lazy, we become apathetic, we sleep on the world, we sleep while all these people are dying and going to hell. And it's like, what are we doing? Like, we have the truth. Like, why aren't we sharing it and reflecting it? And I think that's super terrible. When I go home, a lot of the times, like, I'm told that you might be the only Bible someone ever reads. Your character, you, not your words or what you might do, but just you in general. And I think that's powerful. Like, if someone's only going to know Jesus through you, you better make a good statement. You better make a good impression. And Jonah's not doing that. The world already has this idea of what Christians are, what they think you are. And I just encourage you, don't be what they already think you are. Like, be the light that God made you to be. Because if you aren't a light, we might find ourselves in a fish, like Jonah's about to find himself. So let's pick up in verse 17, chapter 1, and chapter 2. Now the Lord provided a huge fish to swallow Jonah, and Jonah was in the belly of the fish 3 days and 3 nights. From inside the fish, Jonah prayed to the Lord, his God. He said, in my distress I called to the Lord, and he answered me. From deep in the realm of the dead I called for help, and you listened to my cry. You hurled me into the depths, into the very heart of the seas, and the currents swirled about me. All your waves and breakers swept over me. I've said I've been banished from your sight, yet I will look again towards your holy temple. The engulfing waters threatened me, the deep surrounded me, seaweed was wrapped around my head. To the roots of the mountains I sank down, the earth behind me barred me in forever. But you, Lord my God, brought my life up from the pit. My life was ebbing away. I remembered you, Lord. My prayer rose to you, to your holy temple. Those who cling to worthless idols turn away from God's love for them. But I, with shouts of grateful praise, sacrifice to you. What I have vowed, I will make good. I will say salvation comes from the Lord. And the Lord commanded the fish that vomited Jonah onto dry land. So we see Jonah's here, and despite all this crap he just went through and just participated in, and all of it, God still shows him mercy. Like, the Lord provided him a huge fish. He spent 3 days in that fish, and it wasn't like Jonah in this giant whale, kind of like Finding Nemo, where there's just this massive amount of space, and like Jonah's got a little campfire and like a stool, and like he's just hanging out in the boat or the whale. Like, that's not happening. Jonah's more like cramped up in a ball in the fetal position in like this huge fish, and it's not comfortable. Like, I don't remember being in my mom's womb, but I'm sure it wasn't. And so I think that's kind of what it was like for Jonah. And so while you're cramped in a fish for 3 days, it's dark, it's scary. That's a lot of time to think about your actions and what you've done. And so that's what Jonah does. He thinks and he starts praying. And he realizes, like, man, God, like, I sucked. Like, I wasn't that good. I definitely disobeyed you. I deserve to be here. And I'm just grateful you're saving me. And that's what God does. Like, God saves him. God shows him mercy. And he spits him back up after Jonah proclaims in verse 9, like, I'll go share your salvation. It'll be good. And it's awesome. and Jonah is saved. And I think a lot of us are kind of in the same fish that Jonah is. Like, how often do we sin knowing full well, like, you suck right now, like, you are not good, and you're like, man, I don't deserve anything that you have to give me, Lord. And the truth is, like, you don't deserve the love of God, but God chooses to give it to you. God chooses to show his mercy, and that's what he does to Jonah. And so my encouragement, if you feel like crap, know you're not crap, and God still has awesome things for you, just like he's about to do through Jonah. So we pick up again in chapter 3. Then the word of the Lord came to Jonah a second time. Go to the great city of Nineveh and proclaim to it the message I give you. Jonah obeyed the word of the Lord and went to Nineveh. Now Nineveh was a very large city. It took 3 days to go through it. Jonah began by going a day's journey into the city, proclaiming 40 more days, and Nineveh will be overthrown. The Ninevites believed God. A fast